Have you ever driven through your town and noticed a place that used to be there isn't anymore? A store your parents used to shop at, a restaurant people used to meet at, a business that had been there for years, and now it's empty, or it's something completely different. Across our country, that story is happening in town after town, and it usually starts quietly, not with some giant collapse, not with some dramatic headline. It starts in ordinary places: a neighborhood pharmacy, a hardware store, a small market, a local shop where the person behind the counter actually lives in the same community you do. You walk in with the question, what should I use for this? What works best? What do most people buy? They take the time to help you. They explain the options. They share what they've learned from years of doing the work. They give you something most corporations don't give at all: attention, experience, time, and of course, you thank them. Then you step outside, pull out your phone, and order the same thing online. Amazon, eBay, Etsy, Walmart.com, even Target.com. Maybe you save $5, maybe $10, and in that moment, it feels like a smart decision. But when the same decision gets made across our towns, over and over again, something begins to happen. The people doing the work locally are no longer the people getting paid. And that contradiction is worth talking about. This is Empty Promises to You. Most communities did not start broken. Most towns already had what they needed: local pharmacies, local hardware stores, local restaurants, local markets, local businesses built by people who lived there. Families ran them, neighborhoods worked there, money circulated there, and many of those businesses were doing just fine. Then the big chains noticed the same thing the locals already knew. There's money here. So they moved in. New buildings, bright lights, bigger parking lot, lower prices. And at first, it feels like help. It feels like convenience. It feels like progress. It feels like the community is getting a better deal. But those lower prices are not magic. They come from scale. A local business buys inventory in small quantities. A corporation buys by the truckload. A local owner negotiates with a supplier. A corporation negotiates with the entire industries. A local business has to make enough to survive this month. A giant corporation can take a hit for years if it helps wipe out competition. That's not the same game. That's not a free market in the way people pretend it is. That's power using scale. So the squeeze begins. Customers shift to the lower prices. Then more of them shift online. Then more start using local businesses for information and someone else for the sale. Individually, each decision looks small, but across a town, those small decisions start changing the outcome because the local shop cannot keep giving away knowledge while the money keeps leaving. And once enough of that happens, the first business closes. Then another, and then another. Not because people stopped needing those businesses, not because the owners were lazy, not because they suddenly forgot how to do business, but because the economic ground beneath them was changed by players big enough to sell cheaper than the little guy can even buy. And when those businesses disappear, something bigger disappears with them. Local businesses do not just sell products. They sponsor Little League teams. They help fundraisers. They back community events. They donate when somebody gets sick. They know your name. They are stitched into the life of a place. Corporations don't replace that. They replace it with efficiency. A counter, a barcode, a worker doing their best for a company owned somewhere else by people who may never set foot in the town at all. And let me be clear, the worker is not the problem. They're the warning sign. Because when most of the jobs in a community are controlled by outside corporations, the community slowly stops deciding its own future. You can see the same pattern in food. Most people still imagine restaurants buying from local farms, local growers, local suppliers. And some do. But much of the food reaching restaurants, schools, institutions, and chains now moves through enormous national distribution systems. Cisco, U.S. Foods. Those are the food trucks most people never think about. Not taco trucks, distribution trucks. And when a few giant systems control the flow of food, they don't just influence price. They influence access. They influence sourcing. They influence who survives. That is why farm to table keeps getting praised like a comeback story while also dying in practice. Because real local sourcing struggles inside a system built for scale first and community second. And once you see the pattern in one part of town, you start seeing it everywhere else too. Not just in what we buy, but in who owns the buying. Not just in what stays open, but in who gets to decide what closes. That's when the story enters its final stage. Because the corporations that moved in were never there to become part of the town. They were there because the numbers worked. That's it. And when the numbers stop working, they leave. They close the store, they move the distribution, they shut the plant, they cut the jobs, they relocate to somewhere cheaper. They follow the margin. And what do they leave behind? Empty buildings, lower wages, a stripped down local economy, a place that used to have owners, now full of employees, a town that used to have identity, now trying to survive on whatever scraps are left. That's the part people miss. The corporations do not stay to rebuild what they hollowed out. They extract, they clean house. They pull value out of a place, and when there's not enough left to justify staying, they move on. Just look at the pattern across this country. Steel towns, factory towns, mining towns, same story. When the value is there, they come. When the value is gone, they're gone, and the community is left holding the bag. Now, none of this means people are evil for trying to save money. Money is tight. That part is real. But the system counts on that. It counts on people seeing the cheapest price in front of them without seeing the long-term cost behind them. Because over time, money stops circulating locally. It flows outward, out of town, out of the state, up to stockholders, up to ownership groups, up to people who profit from a place without actually belonging to it. That is community drain. And when enough of that drain happens, the town does not just lose stores, it loses leverage, it loses resilience, it loses local control. And once a community loses control of its own economy, someone else decides what stays. Someone else decides what closes. And someone else decides when it's time to move on. That's the part most communities don't realize until it's too late. The cheapest option today can quietly become the most expensive decision tomorrow. I'm MT. This is Empty Promises to You, because I'm done with the empty promises to you. So spend your money like it matters, because it does.